Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise, and welcome back to From the Depths, Fuel Engine Tutorial, Part 2. Now, as I said in the Part 1, basically all this is going to be is a tour of the UFEP, also known as the Useful Fuel Engine Platform by Guidi? Goodness me, I cannot pronounce that name. Goody? Goody sounds weird. Guidi. I'm just going to call him G from now on. Them G. Alright, so G made this platform ages and ages ago. Link is in the description, and it is basically a collection of some of the best or more interesting fuel engines from all over the From the Depths community. It is an invaluable resource for anyone who wants to learn anything about fuel engines, and if you're anything like me, you'll probably find an engine you like on this, prefab it, and then just keep using it on everything, and then never really learn how fuel engines work. That's kind of what happened to me, and I've gotten a lot better at building them now that people have been nice enough to explain very basic principles to me. Nothing I have made even holds a candle to the things on here, so let's get started with the tour. We're going to go start at the top and work our way down in order. So, over there, well, we'll start on the side already. Over there is the grey zone tutorial bit explaining what's what. The black zone is injector engines, and that's a very small zone because there's not an awful lot to injector engines. They're quite basic, and they're also kind of bad by fuel engine standards. And then you get into interesting stuff. The magenta zone over here is small engines, so that's about as small as you can efficiently make turbo-based engines. And the red zone is high power turbo, so these are the meaty engines, the things that if you're running a laser or running, what's another high power thing? If you're running lasers or anything that requires like lots of power and like quite power dense engines, this is the section you want to look at. I believe the two engines that I use most often, which is the Behemoth, and what I thought was the Blue Line, and it's not the Blue Line, and that's unfortunate. Anyway, the two engines I use most regularly in my craft are on this selection right here, because they have lots of power, and fuel, as it is now, is very cheap. If you get a good refinery going, it's not hard to get lots of it for not much at all. That's going to be changed, by the way, once again. Fuel nerf, not fuel engine nerf, fuel nerf is going to be a thing, and fuel will be a lot more important and expensive and strategic. And so, red zone, that's that. The yellow zone, which is the zone right here, is things that are a compromise between efficiency and power. So, they're not as powerful as the things up in the red zone, but they're not as efficient as the things right below it, which is in the green zone, which is where fuel engines, and particularly turbo engines, get really ridiculous, and you get absolutely crazy levels of efficiency. And so yeah, that's the basic layout of the Useful Fuel Engine platform. Do download it and have a squiz at it, because it is the best thing in the world. And you'll note that all these engines are currently running at full burn or close to it. That is because of all these shields around here, set to strength 9, regular burn ACV, and that's because, just for those of you who have forgotten or don't know, the most, realistic or accurate depiction. Basically, fuel engines show their most accurate statistics when they're running at full power. So you get proper power output, you get proper fuel use per second, you get proper power per fuel, PPF, and power per fuel is the name of the game around here. So it's just how much power you get per unit of fuel spent. Okay, so we're going to start at the top here, and at the top you have injector engines. So you have this 5x5x5 injector cluster, so it's a square, or a cube rather. And injector engines have pretty terrible power per fuel generally, largely because they have a lot of power, but they're really inefficient. So if we go here, maximum power output of this one generator, and keep in mind there's 8 of these things in this cluster. That's the great thing about fuel engines, is that between different engine systems, you can link the exhausts of all of them, and particularly with the really hyper-efficient engines down here, that's kind of necessary to get a really good, efficient exhaust line going. So this thing is 8 of these injector engines, and they all have the same amount of power, so about 1,300, or just under that. So 1,300 times 8 is a big number, and I'm just going to calculate that just quickly because I cannot math for goodness. Yeah, what was that number? What the? Ah, there's a... What? Oh, hello. Interesting. Two of these things have more power than the other two, so it's 1,333, plus 1,333, plus... Oh, darn it, I just remembered. No. Actually, it's 1,333 times 4, plus... 1134 times 4, so I'm gonna round the... Like, see, fuel engines are complicated. Plus... plus... and plus... 1134 plus 1134 plus 1134 plus 1134. So, this whole setup in the 5x5 thing is, assuming my math is correct, just short of 10,000 engine power, so 9,868. And it has a noticeable gap in the middle. So, one thing about fuel engines which I've said in the first one, and I'm quoting Ireland Gaming on that, by the way, sorry to trigger nostalgia, is that you can have an efficient engine, you can have a powerful engine, and you can have a small engine, but you can only really pick 2 out of the 3. So this thing is very powerful for its size, and it's quite compact. It's a 5x5 cube. It's not efficient in the least, so if we go down here, look at the power per fuel. Come on, yeah, this engine platform is huge. So let's go over here. Yep, so 72 power per unit of fuel, and this thing is running red hot. It's like, yeah, it's consuming about 19 fuel per second, which is a lot. It's particularly on a craft which doesn't carry much fuel, that burns through things very quickly. And a 72 power per unit of fuel is pretty bad from what I understand. This number can get very, very high, but generally I think if you're getting over about, this is just a random number pulled out of thin air, about 200 power per unit of fuel, that's when things are kind of efficient. 72 is pretty bad. It is, like, not great at all. So, that's that engine, and there's 2 more to look at. Here we have a 3x3 injector cluster, which is a similar thing, and this is just, well, this is possibly the simplest of them all. It is one generator, it's got 1 crankshaft, it's got 4 cylinders coming off it, and just attached to the cylinders are injectors, and attached to the cylinders as well are the exhaust. And you'll notice that for this engine there's 2 exhausts for every cylinder. That's pretty important for injector engines because they overheat easily because they run red hot. They dump a lot of power into the cylinder, and that causes the engine to overheat quite easily, so that's not great. And this thing is just short of 2,000 power, again 72 power per unit of fuel, which is pretty bad. Like, it's pretty much, it starts at that level for injector engines, and it doesn't get any more efficient than that because you can't use other funky things with them in order to make them more efficient. And same with this one. This is a 3x3x2. This is about as small as you can get with an injector, really. And it's by Anodifan. Hi, Anodifan. If you're watching this, love your work. It's very, very teeny tiny. So, it's got maximum energy output is just shy of 800. Slightly more efficient, 75 power per unit of fuel. Still not great. And that's why it's in this black section of shame right here. Because injector engines are really, you should only use them if you haven't gotten the hang of turbo engines yet, and if you really do not care about how much fuel you burn. That was me back in the day. Okay, so that's the black section. Now we go to the red section, and let's have Rambot get some exercise around here. So the red section is fun and interesting. So it's a whole bunch of engines that all work on the same principle. So turbochargers, and they're all just linked via exhaust, and the exhaust all goes one way. So, if we go here... So here is about the start of the exhaust tube, so to speak. And piping assembly has 112 pipes, and you can follow the... what the... Oh wait, wait. So you can follow... Oh, wrong end. Okay, let's go over this thing. 37, 36, 5, 34. So you can, if you are patient enough, follow the line of these things. So let's work our way backwards. So here's an exhaust, and it goes all the way around here, and it only has one exhaust, which is right here. This is the end of it. And if you work your way backwards along this whole thing, it's just one continuous exhaust line that runs through every single turbocharger on this thing. Which is why, if you look at the turbocharger, this one uses 62.2 gas to increase carburetor efficiency by a factor of 3.93. So this thing is about... because where this turbo is, the fact it's connected to this carburetor, it is it's connected to two turbos, each one of which improves the efficiency by about 4. So, assuming my math is correct, this carburetor is about 8 times more efficient and thus uses about 8 times less fuel for the power it gives, which is absolutely fantastic. And there's 2 of these generators in here. This is actually 2 engines smooshed into one. It's got these crankshafts right here, and also why it has this kind of funky 5x6 thing to it. So this thing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meters wide. So yeah, like it's like fuel engine design is not straightforward. I personally think advanced cannons are easier, but that's possibly because I've spent a lot more time on them. And each one of these things gives about 3,000 engine power, so it's already beaten the Injector engine up there, while only being a little bit bigger. So 3,000... Well, it doesn't actually give more power, because that thing is about 9,000 engine power, but this is 6,000, and the power per fuel is just so much better. It's 455. So, yeah, way more fuel efficient. This, I believe, is... doesn't have... They're like, most of these things don't have names, which is kind of annoying, because they'd be a lot easier to differentiate. But yeah, you can look at... there is kind of a pattern to them, a repeating pattern, and the thing... So basically, yeah, the way you'd build a fuel engine is that you can build the whole thing, and you set up all the turbos on, and then you turn mirror mode off, and you just one-way direction of exhaust flow. So, same here, we can find the origin point of the pipe. So it's this way, and it's going here, let's go over here, 170, so 173 pipes. So let's try and find... No. Yeah, it can be. It's a really freaking look at the spaghetti junction down here. So basically, it's the same principle. They're organized in a way that, geez, look at the shenanigans right here. And this is where inline turbos are absolutely fantastic. And by the way, the only real difference between an inline turbocharger and a regular turbocharger is where the exhaust port is. So you see the regular turbocharger, that exhaust port is on the side, and the inline turbocharger exhaust port is, where is it? It's at the top. Really? Hang on, let's compare these things side by side. So, got our inline turbo, and we've got... That's a regular turbocharger, and then we've got our inline turbocharger, which looks like this. Okay, so it's bottom versus side exhaust port. Otherwise, they work exactly the same way, and you can stick them into an exhaust system in exactly the same way as well. So here we've got all these various sizes, and this thing, 373 power per unit of fuel. Okay, not as efficient as this one, because this one has got a lot more exhaust pipes and it's all hooked together a little bit better, but way more power. This whole thing, 7 times 5 times that equation, whatever that is, it's a big engine, it's but it is over 10,000 engine power, and it's only a wee bit bigger than this injector setup right here. So again, if you want to get the hang of like really big, powerful, and also efficient engines, turbos are the way to go. And over here, similar thing, 340 power per unit of fuel, so still, that's decent. 10,000, like 10,572 maximum power, so this thing is even better than this. Like, just because the exhaust is set up a bit better, and also the carburetors are a little bit better. So you see in here, and this kind of reminds me of Cram Tetris a little bit. Getting maximum power out of a turbo engine basically means having carburetors touch as many cylinders as possible. So you see this one, a carburetor usually just gives about, what is it, about 100 power per cylinder touched. But that means that this carburetor is giving 400 engine power, because it's touching 4 cylinders. So its carburetors connected to 1 turbochargers. But yeah, so it's like connecting to every cylinder around it, giving 400 engine power, whereas which means it's actually giving as much power as an injector, because injectors can only attach to 2 cylinders, but yeah, this can attach to 4, and you can take full advantage of that. So, similar story, the whole exhaust spaghetti junction thing, and it's just, yeah, they're all basically constructed on the same principle, which is easy in theory. It requires a bit of patience and shenanigans to work it out in practice. So, here, and this is similar story. It's just, I don't know, I'm perhaps not the best person to explain this, but you can see for yourself here just the artful arrangement of all these turbos right here. It's just, it snakes up and down, and basically it's Tetris. So it's like Advanced Canon Tetris, it's like Cram Tetris, but yeah, so if you, like, you just gotta puzzle that out, Lego style, really. And here we go. I didn't look at the stats of this one. Let's have a look. So 412 power per unit of fuel, about 8,000 engine power. That's also pretty good. Pretty good. Rambot nods. And over here, 666 power per unit of fuel. About 3,200 engine power. Don't panic, 666 is not the number of the beast. It's 616, because there was a spelling mistake in the Bible. So don't worry about that. Feel free to use this engine. The devil will not come for your soul. So yeah, looking at this thing, you'll notice that it's, again, 3D space here. You've got carburetors attaching to more than 1 cylinder, which is a very helpful thing to do. By helpful thing to do, I mean a smart thing to do. And alternative tail segment, that, I believe, is what attaches to this thing. And there's handy wooden guides up here that show you exactly where the repeating patterns happen. So you'll notice that this bit, I believe, is actually the same as this bit. It's just the difference is where the exhausts hook up. So it's just repeating pattern, repeating pattern. This bit is a little bit different, but then repeating pattern again. So once you've figured out the repeating pattern for a fuel engine, you can basically copy and paste segments of it until it's as big and as powerful and efficient as you want. And this is the alternative tail segment to this thing. It can end on a different note, so to speak. Over here this is the behemoth, of which I believe, yes, this is a big boy. This is a big thing. It's well named because remember what I said earlier? You can have any 2 out of the 3 positive things. This is a big. This is an efficient and powerful engine, and you'll notice that like 342 power per unit of fuel. That's 10,000 power though, so it's not fantastic. It's still alright, but maximum power 10,000, and that's one of the generators. There's another one over here. Like, they're basically going in opposite directions, but they're sharing exhaust lines in the middle. So it means that you have that one exhaust line which starts... Oh, goodness me, where would it start? It would be nice to have a contextual button that... Deacon's bloody hellfire. I think this is about as... The piping assembly has 204 pipes. Yeah, it can... There's a lot of exhaust traveling around. Let's see, where's this going? There's 2 meters away. There's one exhaust. In fact, that's the only exhaust. Over here, 63 meters away. How much exhaust pipes? This thing is using 137.4 gas to increase carburetor efficiency by 3.93. So, again, increasing it by 4. And this one has 2 carburetors attached. 2 turbos attached. So yeah, the key to engine efficiency is basically have a very long exhaust line that runs through every single turbo, and it only flows one way, and also manage to jam as many turbochargers onto each carburetor as you possibly can, and you'll see more of that once we get down below. Anyway, the Behemoth, whenever I need something with a lot of power, I use the Behemoth, simply because, like, it's quite modular. I just use it as it is right here, actually, because, like, I don't know, it gives 20,000 power, that's plenty. And it is reasonably fuel efficient as well. Like, okay, it's not great, it's using 30 fuel per second at full burn, but 10,000 engine power, man. 20,000, actually. 60 fuel per second for 10,000 power. And over here is a slightly smaller version of that. 8,400 engine power, 300 power per unit of fuel, blah blah blah. Most of these things have pretty similar stats, really. It's why they're grouped together. And over here, one last one. Similar story. They all have just, all using pretty similar principles, really. You'll notice this one has crazy turbo things and kind of folds around in a 3D way. So if you want to make a good turbo engine, you can't just think in 2 dimensions. So it's not like making a cram cannon, say. Sorry, I need a frame of reference for something I know. Where you're just kind of thinking, well, making a basic cram cannon anyway, where you're not just thinking in just 2D flat pancakes. You need to think about how the exhausts wrap around the engine like the wrapping of a Christmas present. So that's very important. And by the way, it's the 2 things on the bottom you need to link to the exhaust, not this white tube. White tube goes on carburetor, at least the one plugging out the side. Black tubes go into the exhaust. So yeah, that's that. And I think that's, yeah, we've been here before. Okay, so let's go down again to the yellow section. Now this is the moderately efficient stuff, so what was going on up there? There was around 300 and 400 ppf. Immediately you see we've jumped to 1000 at the first thing we look at, but notice the power is a lot lower, so this is just 1800 power. This thing's getting 1000 power per unit of fuel, consuming 1.8 fuel per second, which is fantastic fuel consumption. This is already very good, and it only goes more nuts from here. So having a look at this thing, you'll notice what I said before, is that it's as many carburetors, as many turbos jammed onto carburetors as you can, lots of exhaust, and let's see, 25.4 gas used by this turbo to improve carburetor efficiency. It's hard to think, like, how exactly this is so much more efficient, but part of the reason is because it is smaller, and it does make less power. That does help. Like, you tend to find you do have to compromise on the power generation in order to make things efficient, which is fine, honestly, because the game is already a little bit broken as it is in terms of that. Now this thing's a little bit interesting. So, original design from Unified Engine Raft. So, G is giving citing his sources, their sources, sorry, and this is an outdated design apparently. So, yeah, that's a thing to be aware of. But yeah. I completely forgot to mention something extremely important, and that is the tutorial section. Sorry about that. Where are we? Here it is. So it's basically the difference between inline turbos and regular turbos. So this is an engine called the Hercules 2000, and this is the Hercules 2000, but with inline turbos instead of non-inline turbos. So over here, basically, there's this whole lure box explaining all this kind of stuff. And one max, basically what you need to remember is that superchargers are pretty much don't bother. It only provides maximum 1.05 times efficiency boost on all the carburetors it connects. Normal turbos only reserve 1-2 batches of exhaust from the cylinder, resulting in either 1.1 times or 1.31 times efficiency boost. Inline turbos can receive up to 30 batches of exhaust to provide that golden number, 3.93 efficiency boost, and this results in the situation. 1 max efficiency inline turbo is better than 3 normal turbos, even with the multiplicative calculation. Okay, so that is important to note, and you can see that. So this one is using regular turbos. You see they're not all threaded on the they're not all threaded into the exhaust. They're just kind of acting as exhausts on the cylinders. 1.6 gas used by the turbocharger to increase carburetor efficiency by 1.27. As opposed to these things, which is 6.5 gas used by this turbocharger to increase carburetor efficiency by 1.78. And you can see the difference in the ppf. So this is giving about 2,000 power, 127 power per unit of fuel. Okay, that's nice. Go over here. What the hell? Alright, this is very important actually. Oh wait, I'm remembering this wrong. Right, sorry, I goofed. Okay, 127 power per unit of fuel, 2,000 power, 15 fuel use per second. Now we go over here, same amount of power, in fact slightly more because it's better at cooling, 385 power per unit of fuel, 5.2 fuel use per second. So, well, 3 times as efficient, basically. And slightly more powerful, so really, no reason not to use inlines at all, apart from the fact they're complicated. And this is the Forbidden Science corner. Restricted access beyond this point, laboratory, so I'm not going to even mess with that, also because my shield's over there. So sorry about that, that was a little intermission, I forgot to mention that because that's actually really important. Why use inline turbos instead of anything else? So yeah, there's all this wacky stuff. This is, this kind of pattern is something I actually made by accident when I was mucking around with this. This is a much better example, though, of what on earth you should be doing. Where's the generator here? It's hard to find sometimes. There it is. So, what's this thing's deal? So, this thing, you get about 6,000 power per unit of fuel. Maximum power is just shy of 2,000. So again, this is a big engine. It is an efficient engine, but it's not really powerful, and it's also quite big. So, the yellow section is... wouldn't really bother with that. The red section, you get more oomph, and in the section below, you get ridiculous efficiency. So over here, similar thing, you get over 1,000, gosh darn it. Similar thing, almost 1,000 power per unit of fuel. You'll see that this sign is a little bit different. This thing isn't quite at 100% load, but that's okay. So maximum power, 1,200 roughly. Almost 1,000 power per unit of fuel, only 1.2 fuel consumption per second. So this is, again, very efficient. Coming back for you later. And over here you get a similar story. 1,000, almost 1,300 power per unit of fuel, 5 fuel use per second, and 6,400 power. So this is a good engine. This is pretty darn efficient, and you get a decent amount of power out of it. It is quite big though. That is unfortunate. You'll notice it's got lots of exhaust, similar story, it's just threading it all together and threading it all one way. So yes, you're working back here, it has 146 pipes. And it will go here, for instance, 82 meters away. Lots of that. How much? 99.8 gas is used by this turbo to increase carburetor efficiency by 3.93, which is really important. And once again, there's 2 turbos on that carburetor, so it's 8 times as efficient, roughly, as you were doing before. And it's attached to 4 cylinders, so it's got that magical providing 400 power to it. So, maximum power output 100, 100, 100, no, maximum power output 200, and then 200 again. So yeah, it's all about sticking where you stick your carburetors and how you hook up your turbos. I might be repeating myself a little bit, but oh, there's Fan again. Hi there. So again, similar thing. This is a pretty good number. Like some of these engines, okay, I retract my statement. Some of these engines aren't great. This one isn't actually that great, to be perfectly honest with you, because not much power. But yeah, look at that fuel consumption though, 0.3. If you don't need much power, it could actually be worth it to have an engine like this. But it only gets more efficient. So, similar story, all this kind of stuff. Usual shenaniganry with exhausts. So yeah, it's all about the exhausts, all about the turbos. And you'll notice that there is not a supercharger to be seen. The only place you find a supercharger is on this example crap engine. Because, like, you don't need them. Like, use that space instead for turbos and exhausts, because superchargers can't be used in conjunction with exhaust systems to improve efficiency. Turbos can, and that's why turbos are better in pretty much every single way. Except I just noticed this has a spare supercharger stuck in here that's attached to... Yeah, it's attached to multiple carburetors, so I guess if you have room for them, you can stick them in, but otherwise you are better off sticking more turbos in there. Actually, you could easily stick another turbo in there, I think. In fact, excuse you. Let's have an inline turbo. Something like... then you might have your troubles. Left. Yeah, you could totally replace, oh, no, you can't really. So much for me trying to be clever. Right, let's carry on the yellow section, so more of the same, more of the same. So this one's is about 3,200. Lots of PPF. Again. So a lot of these engines are actually quite similar, like the change as you go from top to bottom is quite gradual. So this one, these things are almost the same size. What's the difference? That, and whoa, what a dick. So over here we have an engine that's 3,200 and is 1288 power per unit of fuel. This one's a 4,100 engine power, but the same PPF, so what's different? So, let's look at the signs. 5 times 5 times 7 version, blah blah blah, and this is the modification. 5.557. And this is better. So this is the blue line over here, the famous blue line, which I thought I had used, and I have not. I repurposed something completely different. I wanted to, yeah, I don't know what thing I used, but it wasn't the blue line. But yeah, so this is the version with it, and you'll notice that, what is the difference here? I'm having trouble with it. It's just rigged slightly differently. The central part is still exactly the same, but okay, hold on, my phone's ringing. No! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am back, and now I have to rush because there's a guy coming up to measure my bath very quickly, and so, well, there's no really any point rushing, really, is there? Life is too short. So anyway, we've got all this stuff here. What was I talking about? This is the blue line, and as far as I'm concerned, G is a wizard. Because it's gonna... Oh. Ew. What's he done here? There's extra exhausts just down in there. I don't know, like, figuring out the difference between these two engines, somehow squeezing, like, how much extra power? 800 extra power. Well, no, 900 extra power out of this. It's just, it's warping my brain. It hurts. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. This thing actually has superchargers on it. What does GF say about this? Original design by Eagle with modifications. Hello? Where's the... Oh, you cheeky sod. Oh, yeah, cheeky sod. And you also notice that adapters are very important with this kind of thing because they allow you to just branch off the crankshaft in different directions and make more room for stuff. So, in this particular case, the turbochargers have room to do their thing because of the adapters. That's the only reason you can do this. And so let's look at this. Already pretty efficient. 1400 power per unit of fuel, 2600 power. And that's just, I don't know, I guess turbo, again, supercharger is, this is a random supercharger is just here, just because, really. Just because, like, what else are you gonna stick there? I think it only has the one. Sorry, I was just listening out for a knock on the door right there. Darn it, real life, you keep getting in the way of video games. Okay, so what do we have here? Again, I really just think that the devs didn't think people would stick fuel engines right together like this, because they're not meant to be. They're clipping like crazy. Cylinder has a problem, unfortunately. Where? Well, at least one exhaust isn't externally vented. Which exhaust is that? Oh, this one. Easy thing to fix. Like so. Ta-da! Now we're in business. 2000, 2000. Let's see, 2000. Whoa, this is getting very efficient now. 1800 power per unit of fuel, 2000 power. Same over here, pretty much. Hang on, is there a difference? Nah, there's no difference. So again, this is sticking two engines together. Oh goodness, it's got that freaking symmetrical but even thing going on. That is crazy to me. Yeah, so yeah, there's all kinds of dirty tricks. It's just linking the turbos together with exhausts, having the carburetors touch multiple cylinders, like sticking engines generators right next to each other, having multiple engines share the same exhaust. It's madness, I say. So this is also a twin engine design by the look of it. Yep, similar to the Behemoth. It's got one over there, and another one over here. Let's see what's going on. 2,200 power, about 1,500 power per unit of fuel, but there's two of them, so linked together to make them all more efficient. So that's 4,000 power right here. What does G have to say about that? Nothing that's in English, basically. So, go over there, go over there, go over there. And what's over here? More wacky stuff. Oh my goodness, yep, this is where things get crazy. 5,000 power per unit of fuel, maximum power 2,400. And you'll notice that the power stays steady with these things simply because once you get this kind of efficiency, it means you have a lot of exhaust. So the engine cools itself very effectively. There's like, what's going on in here? There's like two engines in here. So again, this is a twin engine design. Look at this. Exhaust running through here. I'm just, my jaw is currently on the floor right now. Over here, tutorial section. Did we look at this thing yet? I think, I think we did. Did we? Yeah, we did. Okay, so now comes the moment we've all been waiting for. Wait, no, not yet. Here we have the tiny engines. Usually they're sufficient due to lack of exhaust. Yeah, noticeably, because exhausts take up room. And the less exhaust you have, the less turbochargers you can thread them through. So these things, they're small, and they're not very powerful, but they're still reasonably efficient. So we go over here, look at this. 414 power per unit of fuel, which is a bit of a downer from 5,000. Maximum power 1,000, which is quite reasonable. So these are about as close to you can get to a balanced engine. You want 2,000 power, you put down two of these things. Similar thing over here, 600 power, 135, not very good, not very good, but tiny, it's 3x3x3, teeny tiny. And let's, yeah. And that is Apophis _ MD made that one. And lots of tiny engines here. You'll see you barely don't even have to shrink the blocks really, you can see what's going on. What's over here, 400 power, 241 power per unit of fuel, a little bit more like it. 1.7 fuel used per second. And over here, what's over here? 3x3, only 200 power, because here we've got this carburetor attached to two cylinders, only two, but it's got three turbos stuck on that single carburetor. 359 power per unit of fuel, only uses 0.6 fuel per second. That is pretty darn efficient. Saves you a lot of money. Here, 4x4x4 experimental design. Ooh, experimental. 800 power, 326 power per unit of fuel. What was this one again? Pretty similar, actually. Just 30 off. So 4x4x4, you make it just one block bigger in every direction, and this is what you get. And this is cuckoo crazy. Yeah, 3, 3, 3. So you see that actually once you strip off the turbos and the exhausts, you'll see that these things, it's reasonably straightforward. I say reasonably, it's just leaving gaps in ways that turbos and exhaust can fit in, which is quite nice. Okay, now it's the bit you've all been waiting for. It's going down to the green section. And this is where things get completely insane. Because looking at this engine here, it's you'll notice that it's not space efficient. There's big gaps in it all the way, and it's not very powerful, but what the hell is this? It's 2,600, 700 power per unit of fuel, zero fuel consumption. Zero, and pretty much everything on this green section is like this. Only 600 power, but no fuel consumption. However, there's a note to be something to note about this, and that is, it says zero, it's not actually zero. So, years ago, the devs patched out the ability to make zero fuel consumption engines because that is completely broken. And I've been told by multiple people that yes, it's been patched, and no, it hasn't. What is happening here is that it's hard capped at a certain amount of fuel consumption. It cannot show it here because I think it's like got lots of decimal points. But if I prefab this thing, so let's go here, prefab, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can actually check another thing, 7 times 7 times 8. Hopefully that's correct. Prefab that. And now we're going to pull you out of place up. I'm going to go on a raft. Do 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 do. Meow meow meow. Dooby 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 dooby. Jeez, be slow. Be more slow. Okay, so we got this thing on our raft right here. And we have fuel for it. Fuel. 1 box of fuel. So, right here, you'll notice that we have 1,000 fuel. Keep an eye on that number. It's down in the bottom right. And now we are going to put something that uses power. And remember, this thing uses, well, it says here it uses 7.2 fuel per second. That's not accurate. That's because it's not using any power right now. When you place something that uses, here it is. Here it is, heat decoy. So, you'll see just there, it used some fuel. That is because these things can't get to absolute zero in terms of fuel efficiency. So how much is that? Let's ramp that up to 1,000. Let's do this again. And wait for it, it'll still count down. So this thing is running at full efficiency right now, pretty much. Yes, it is. And keep an eye on that, Future me, you might have to speed up the video and zoom in on the fuel gauge. Ah, no, there we go. So you see, even though that this thing says that it's using 0 fuel, it is actually using fuel. It's just using very, very little fuel. I actually timed this thing. At full burn, this particular engine uses about 2 units of fuel per minute, which is not a lot of fuel, to put it bluntly. So let's pull all. Let's jump back on the useful fuel engine platform. Here we can look at these super efficient engines a bit more. So over here, vroom vroom vroom, vroom vroom vroom. I want you in my room. So there's this thing, and pretty much all of these engines use 0 fuel and have absolutely stupid PPF ratings. So this one is 72,000 power per unit of fuel, maximum power 200. None of these things are particularly powerful, by the way, because they sacrifice power in order to get as many turbos on each carburetor as possible. You'll notice that up in the yellow and red section, you have about 2, occasionally 3 turbos per carburetor. Let's look at the behemoth again. Where are you? Where's the behemoth? Here's the behemoth. Behemoth? Aha, behemoth. So, looking up here, you'll see that it has, well, on average, I want to say on average, about 2, occasionally just 1 turbos per carburetor. Down here, they've gone nuts, and there's 5 turbos on every carburetor. And that's the trick for getting a very, very efficient engine, is you have to somehow stick 4 or 5 turbos on one carburetor. On each carburetor, actually, because if you have just one that's only got 1 or 2 turbos on it, that ruins the whole thing. Also, these engines are very big. So, these are really efficient, but they are big, and they do give bugger all power. So, these are the efficiency specialists, you can say. They're not small, they don't give much power, but jeez, they're efficient. They're absolutely ridiculous. It's almost more efficient than you really need. There's nothing that'll... Well, just is basically nothing that would require such fuel efficiency, even with the upcoming fuel nerfs. So here, I have this massive thing, similar story, just maximum power is 400. 400. 400, and 400, and 400, and 400. So this is 4 engines glued together. Only about 1,600 power for this whole huge thing. That is 5 times 8 times... How big is this? It's pretty darn big. It's, how tall is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12. So 13, including this exhaust over here. Big engine. More power than the previous ones. Actually, I should probably go check to see how many generators are hidden in here. Yeah, there's one. So 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, 200. I lost count how many generators that was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this whole thing gives around 1,000 power, which isn't terrible, but not great. You can barely run a whole bank of large propellers off that. Here they get. Oh, these things are so big. They're so big. They're so big. So strong. Okay, so here we have some of the story. 20,000 freaking power per unit of fuel. 400 power, but similar story. It's and again, it's the extreme example of the principles we were seeing, hooking multiple generators up together. And you'll notice that there are gaps in the middle. These things are not space efficient. So if your OCD is triggered by gaps being left in your engine, do what I do and just fill up these spaces with fuel, because you'll need to stick it in anyway. But yes, let's see here. We have 400, 400, 400, 400. And you'll notice that it kind of branches off a little bit. So here... Yeah, so there's superchargers stuck in here simply because you don't have room for turbos. Which seems to be the common thing in here. It's like, superchargers go in there when turbos can't fit. Which is fair enough, really. Over here, similar story, 400. Okay, way less efficient. So, we go here, 20,000 ppf, and 14,000 ppf. Honestly, once you get to 10,000 ppf, you're pretty much good. 400, 400, 400, 400, wah, and 400, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times, that's 400 times 5 is 2,000, I think. Is that right? 1,000, 400, 800, 1,200, 1,600, 2,000. Yeah, so 2,000 power on this very long, skinny thing. And where are we? Which direction were we going in? Over here. Aha! And now this is my favorite section of the whole damn thing. The carpet. This thing is just silly. It's again, this isn't as hyper efficient. It's 2,700 power per unit of fuel, 200 power, but you chain them together, so 15 lane to get 0 fuel usage. So you're going to keep extending this thing until you get the fuel usage you want. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 15. Well, how long is this thing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So yeah, that's not the same anymore. So yeah, so 200 times 7 equals 1,400. But this is actually reasonably compact. It's only 2 blocks tall, which means you could actually conceivably fit this in quite a lanky ship. In fact, I'm planning to use this thing more in the future because, as you know, I like long, skinny ships. It's the carpet, and here's its friend, the doormat, which is a similar design. It's only 2 blocks tall, and I love flat. Look at all these generators. This does make this more expensive, by the way, because fuel engine components are all quite cheap, but the generator is the most expensive component. So, also, basically, generators and injectors are the only really pricey things. So if you lose lots of generators, it is going to get expensive fast. So, only 100 power, but 3 connections to this carburetor with the turbos, lots of exhaust, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 times 100, 400, 800 power, basically. So the doormat is like the carpet, but it's got less cylinders in it. Yeah, so you see cylinders run down the middle in the carpet. There are no cylinders down the middle in the doormat. Are these things more efficient? 2,000. That's over here. Not more efficient, really. Then you have this thing, which is the 5x6x3 version of the carpet, which is 3 carpets stacked together. So, and over here, 200, 200, 200. Again, that's 200, 200, 200. And 600, 1200, 1800 power. All of these things using basically 0 fuel. And this is way more efficient because, again, where is it, where is it, where is it, where is it? Yep, there it is. All these different engine systems are using the same exhaust path, which is super cool. So yeah, that's basically it for the tour. I don't think I missed out any particularly noteworthy engines. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you learned something with this. Do yourself a favor, go to the Steam Workshop, follow the link in the description, and download this platform. You will thank yourself profusely. It certainly changed my From the Depths experience, and has helped me learn a lot about turbo engines, and it will help you too, right up until an update renders everything on it pointless. But hopefully that'll never happen. Fingers crossed, touch wood. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon if you like, it really helps. And I will see you next time in From the Depths. Farewell!